Late evening, the streets of the city are consumed by the shadow of the night. In the dark alleys and abandoned courtyards, everything is quiet. But suddenly, loud barking and screeching. A pack of stray dogs surrounds a small German shepherd puppy. It lies helplessly on the ground, and the aggressive dogs are ready to tear it apart. At that moment, when it seems there is no hope, he appears. A brave man, determined not to stand aside. He rushes into the very center of this dangerous scene, driving the hostile animals away. But the stray dogs are not about to retreat so easily. Will he be able to save the puppy when they start attacking him as well? These 30 seconds will change the puppy's life forever. Late evening. The city had no signs of life except for the occasional cars passing through the empty streets. In the dark alleys, only the rare streetlights dimly illuminated the wet sidewalks, where traces of the recent rain still lingered. The city seemed to freeze, swallowed by the shadow of the night. Only the faint glow of distant lights and street lamps pierced this silence. A man walked down the central street, enjoying the tranquil atmosphere of the night city. The silence here was almost magical, as if everything in the world had calmed down. There were no pedestrians, and all the stores had long closed their doors. He knew this route by heart, and for him, walking these streets late at night was almost a ritual. In moments like this he could think, relax, and escape the worries that occupied his thoughts throughout the day. Everything was perfect. But suddenly, from afar, he heard a strange noise. At first he mistook it for the usual city sounds. Faint growls, the echoes of the wind, or the sounds of nocturnal birds. However, soon the noise began to intensify. The barking of dogs. He tensed up. The barking was unsettling, even aggressive. The man slowed his pace and listened, trying to understand what was happening. He noticed something flickering in the distant corner of the street, in the dim light of the street lamp. Something was moving quickly in the darkness, and it was clearly alive. It was a pack of stray dogs that had noisily entered this abandoned part of the city. Soon he realized that among the dogs was something small, something vulnerable. Looking closer, he saw it was a puppy. A small German shepherd puppy, frightened, trembling, with dark eyes full of fear. The puppy was surrounded by 5 or 6 aggressive stray dogs, pressing it in, trying to attack. The dog's teeth gleamed in the light of the street lamp, and the puppy desperately tried to defend itself, but its tiny body was too weak to fight the strength of its pursuers. The barking of the dogs grew louder, tearing through the silence of the night, filling it with a threatening sound. The man immediately understood that action was needed. He glanced around, but there was no one who could help him. He realized that it was now or never. Determination and the instinct to save overwhelmed him. He couldn't leave the puppy in trouble. He couldn't allow these street dogs to tear it apart. Taking a step forward, he didn't notice how his breath became heavy and his heart started pounding in his chest. His fear for the puppy overshadowed everything. He rushed toward the pack. The man didn't think about what might await him. He saw how the stray dogs began to show aggression. In their eyes was something wild, hungry. They seemed ready to attack not just the defenseless puppy, but him as well. The man desperately swung his arms, waving them, trying to drive the aggressive animals away. But instead of retreating, the dogs began to growl and surrounded him even tighter. Their eyes glinted in the darkness like 2 fires, and they didn't want to back down. One of the dogs, the largest and most vicious, lunged at him, and the man barely managed to dodge. The dog grabbed his sleeve, trying to catch him. The man quickly pushed it away with his foot, not letting it get closer. The dogs didn't give up. Their attacks became more aggressive. The man felt his strength begin to drain, but he knew he couldn't stop. He had to save the puppy. Every movement was driven by the instinct of self-preservation and the determination not to leave the little one in danger. He wasn't going to retreat. The man swung his arms again, driving the dogs back. They began to retreat, but at that moment, another dog, with a wild growl, leaped at him, and its teeth sank into his boot. The man, without thinking, jumped sideways, but immediately, pressing his shoulder against the wall, he felt the dogs were even more numerous, and they continued to attack him. It was a real battle. However, the man, exhausted, with bruises and cuts on his arms, didn't give up. Step by step, with immense effort, he pushed the dogs aside. He understood that he just had to keep fighting. And then, when the pack tried to attack again, the man had enough strength to push the last dog away, and the dogs, realizing they couldn't defeat him, began to scatter, running in different directions. When the last one disappeared into the darkness, the man ran to the puppy. The puppy was lying on the ground, its little paws weak, but it was alive. The puppy trembled from fear and pain, but the man felt he had to take care of it. He gently lifted it into his arms, holding it close as if he wanted to protect it from the world. The puppy didn't resist. It was weak, but on the man's face there was determination. This puppy would not be left alone. The man hurried home, not paying attention to the dark streets, dark alleys, and the faint lights flickering past him. He carefully held the puppy in his arms, making sure not to hurt it as he passed through the blocks, feeling time stretch. The puppy trembled, but it was alive. It trusted this man, although it didn't understand what was happening. The man was its only hope at that moment, and they were on their way to his home. The man was sure the puppy would stay alive because now it was under his protection. He carefully placed the puppy in a safe spot at his home, wiping the sweat from his brow. He immediately began to take care of it. He gave the puppy food and water, then carefully examined it to assess the extent of the injuries. Its paw was badly injured, and one ear was cut. The man immediately realized that he needed to urgently take the puppy to the vet. But right now, on this night, the important thing was that the puppy was alive. The man felt that it would be okay. He didn't know what awaited him in the future, but he knew for sure that he would be there with it until it recovered. This was the beginning of a new journey for both of them. The night did not let go of the city. The dark streets, cooled after the rain, still reflected the dim light of the street lamps, and the sound of cars coming from afar seemed even more distant in this deserted area. The air smelled fresh, but along with it was something uneasy that the man sensed as he walked home with the puppy he had saved. The puppy was still trembling in his arms, but the man knew that his little companion would be safe. He had already taken it home and fed it, but this time it wasn't just about returning the puppy to normal. He had to do everything to make it healthy and confident again. The man could not predict that the night would bring them both a new challenge. He thought that everything was behind him, that saving the puppy had been his only heroic deed that evening, but reality turned out to be different. Suddenly, like a thunderclap out of nowhere, the man felt that something was wrong. He left the house with the puppy in his arms, deciding to walk through the nearby streets to calm the little one, who was still nervous. In the darkness, along the old buildings, his steps echoed until a new sound was heard. A low, threatening growl. The man tensed up. He could feel the tension building, and unable to ignore the inner feeling, he suddenly stopped. A few meters away from him, in the shadow of an old store, the man noticed a pair of glowing eyes watching him closely. He took a step back, trying to see what it was, but his doubts quickly dissolved when he saw them. Again, the pack of stray dogs. This time, there were more of them, maybe 10 or 12. Their fur was dirty, their eyes filled with wildness, and their behavior was ominous. These were not the same dogs he had faced before. They were more experienced in street life, and it seemed that in their minds there was nothing but aggression. The puppy in his arms began to get nervous again, and the man felt the tremor run through his body. He realized that it would not be easy to deal with them this time. Not every dog he had encountered in his life was this aggressive, but there was something incredibly dangerous in these stray dogs that made him uneasy. Fear gripped his throat, but he knew that if he didn't act decisively, these creatures might attack the puppy again, and he would not allow himself such weakness. The man squinted for a second, gulping air and taking a deep breath. He understood that for both the puppy and him, this night wouldn't end without a fight. Fear was in his chest, but so was determination, and in this decision there was no place for hesitation. He began to move forward, intending to walk past them. But the dogs were not going to let him go. As soon as he took a few steps, the nearest one growled, and all the others began moving toward him, each with the intention to attack. The man suddenly took a stance, looking back at the approaching dogs. One of them, the largest, tried to jump on him, and the man barely managed to dodge, but it scratched his arm, leaving a deep mark on his skin. The pain shot through his body instantly, but the man didn't stop. He kept waving his arms, desperately trying to drive them away. They didn't retreat. Their eyes burned with hatred, and their paws crackled on the asphalt, as though each dog was born here with the sole purpose of winning. The man didn't know how long this went on. He pushed them away with his feet, with his hands, retreating step by step, pausing when the aggression in their movements became more evident. Every movement was aimed at protecting the puppy. He felt his arms shaking, but the dogs weren't giving him a moment to rest. The barking they made grew louder, their growling ripping through the night's silence, and the man felt his strength leaving him more and more. One of the dogs, gripping his boot, tried to drag him away, but the man angrily shoved it away, not allowing himself even a second of respite. The puppy, pressed in his arms, was trembling from every growl and jump, but the man knew that he had to keep going. He couldn't afford to retreat. The man struck at them with his hands, his blows sure and lightning fast, trying to drive the stray dogs away as quickly as possible, not giving them a chance to surround him again. At some point, they began to retreat. The dogs, not understanding why the man hadn't given up, backed away. The man, exhausted and beaten, but alive, with bandages on his hands, stood in the empty street, watching as the last dogs disappeared into the darkness. He knew that it wasn't over yet, that something dangerous could still happen, but at this stage, he understood that he had won. The puppy in his arms, still with no full strength, was alive, and that was the most important thing. The man took a few deep breaths, trying to calm himself. He looked at the puppy. It was safe, but its eyes expressed concern. The puppy was still trembling in his arms, and despite his fatigue and pain, the man tried to hold it close, reassuring it that now it was under his protection. The way home was long and difficult. The man knew that he needed to take the puppy to the vet, that their journey was just beginning. But for him, one thing mattered. The puppy survived, and despite the dangers, he could still give it a new life, full of care and love. This time, the man didn't just save the puppy from inevitable death. He saved it from a world where violence and loneliness reign. This puppy, it had already become his family. The next morning, the man woke up early. The sky outside the window was still gray, a harbinger of rain. He got out of bed, trying not to disturb the puppy, which had settled comfortably on the blanket by the sofa. The puppy, though still trembling a little from the events of the night, looked much better than the evening before. It was still weak, but its gaze had become more alive, and there was no longer the panic that had been in its eyes the previous night. The man couldn't help but feel his heart fill with care and responsibility for this small, vulnerable companion. He gently got out of bed and headed to the kitchen where he made a cup of hot coffee. His thoughts returned to the events of the night. He still felt the remnants of adrenaline in his body from the fight with the stray dogs, but now, looking at the puppy, the man realized that his decision, his action, was not accidental. This puppy had become his purpose, and he knew that its life would change along with its rescue. The coffee was warm, but he could hardly taste it. All he could think about was how to make sure the puppy fully recovered. He knew he needed to take it to the vet, and the sooner, the better. The man knew that the puppy was injured, and these wounds could be serious. The problem with the paw and the damaged ear was obvious. He couldn't let the puppy remain without the necessary treatment. He picked the puppy up carefully, holding it close to himself as if not wanting to disturb it any further. The puppy was still small, and the man felt its lightness, its defenselessness. He could see how the puppy trusted him, relying on his care. Despite his own exhaustion, the man knew that now he couldn't leave it alone in this world. The veterinary clinic was just a few blocks from his home, but the man knew that every movement of the puppy had to be under special attention. He walked slowly, feeling how the puppy grew more accustomed to his hands, to his presence. The puppy was like a small miracle that could be kept, protected from the cruel world. The man felt that caring for the puppy had become his life's purpose. He was going to do everything to make sure the puppy would never know pain, fear, or loneliness. When they reached the clinic, the man paused at the door for a moment as if preparing for the next trial. He knew that the visit to the vet was just the first step. However, looking at the small, helpless creature in his arms, he understood that he was doing everything right. The vet, an elderly man in a white coat, greeted them with a friendly smile, but as soon as he saw the puppy, his face grew more serious. The doctor examined its wounds, the injured paw and the cut on the ear. He immediately noticed that the injuries were not too deep, but they could lead to an infection if not treated promptly. The man, exhausted from the emotional strain, simply stood by, watching the vet work on the puppy. He felt his heart tighten with each movement of the doctor, with each touch to the puppy's wounds. After the examination, the vet said that the injuries were not critical but would require attentive treatment. He prescribed antibacterial medications and ointments to heal the wounds and gave recommendations for taking care of the puppy over the next few days. The man listened attentively, carefully memorizing all the instructions, understanding that he would have a lot of work and effort ahead of him to help the puppy fully recover. As he left the clinic, the man felt a slight sense of relief. The vet was optimistic, and that gave him confidence, but he needed to continue keeping an eye on the puppy. He was ready to keep caring for it, to go through this recovery process with it, and to help it stand on its feet. The puppy was now his responsibility, and the man knew he wouldn't let it go, wouldn't let it disappear from his life. At home, the man set the puppy up in a cozy corner on a mat, covering it with a warm blanket. He knew that the most important thing now was to give the puppy peace and time to recover. But the puppy was not just in his care, it was part of his life, part of his story. The man could feel that with every glance at the puppy who now entrusted every part of itself, every weakness, to him. In the following days, the man didn't leave the puppy's side. He fed it, cared for it, and made sure that everything the vet recommended was followed. He repeated the procedures again and again, even when the puppy resisted, not understanding what was happening to it. The man was persistent and patient. The puppy gradually began to recover. Every day, its condition improved. It became more accustomed to its new home, to the care and love the man gave it. In the evening, after the puppy had eaten its dinner and taken a short nap, the man approached it and smiled weakly. He knew that there would be much work ahead, but he was ready to walk this path. He was ready to be with the puppy to the end, to protect it from any danger and to care for it like his own friend. The man was sure of one thing. This puppy had changed his life, and now his life would always be connected to it. It wasn't just the rescue of an animal. It was the beginning of a new story that they would write together, step by step, day by day. Several weeks had passed since the man took on the responsibility of caring for the puppy. The puppy had grown much stronger, and its wounds had healed, but even after that, the man did not leave it alone. He felt that a special bond had formed between them, a connection that could not be broken. The puppy had become a part of his life, of his daily routine. Each day they spent together, and with each passing day the man felt more and more that the puppy was not just a friend, but a true member of the family. Every morning began with the man waking up early, and the puppy, now no longer as weak as before, would approach him with its tail wagging joyfully, signaling its desire to go for a walk. The man would get out of bed, and despite his tiredness, he would dress happily, knowing that their morning ritual, a walk in the park, awaited them. The puppy, running to the door, barked joyfully, tearing at him with its impatience. These walks had become not just a necessity, but something much more. The man watched as the puppy grew, its little paws becoming more confident, its body becoming more muscular. Each walk was a new discovery for the puppy, and for the man, It was proof that they had overcome everything together. The puppy began to confidently chase the ball, catch it in the air, and bring it back. It increasingly delighted its owner, and in turn, the man rejoiced in every one of its successes. Gradually, the puppy began to learn new commands. The man taught it simple things like sit, lie down, and come here. He didn't rush, patiently repeating each movement, each command, knowing that with every new success, the puppy would become more and more confident. It wasn't just training, it was time spent together, with each of them supporting the other. In these moments, the man felt their bond strengthening, and the puppy, as if understanding this, tried to please its owner. However, life wasn't just about pleasant walks and training. The man understood that, like any pet, the puppy needed constant care and attention. It wasn't just the walks, but also regular visits to the vet, vaccinations, and disease prevention. The man carefully monitored the puppy's health, never forgetting the necessary procedures to ensure it would live a long and healthy life. He cared for it as if it were his own child, and he never felt tired of the constant duties. With each passing day, the puppy grew stronger and stronger. Not only was it physically strong, but it was also emotionally developed. It became more and more attached to its owner, watching him with its eyes whenever he left the room, and always joyfully greeting his return. Their communication became true harmony. The man even began to feel that the puppy somehow read his mood, reacting to his emotions. When the man was tired, the puppy would simply sit next to him, resting its head on his lap, quietly and peacefully, offering its presence as support. When the man was in a good mood, the puppy would immediately start playing, joyfully wagging its tail, which brought even more happiness to its owner. Despite the fact that the man took care of the puppy and provided all the necessary conditions for its life, he also understood that their time together was not just about raising and caring. It was something more, a mutual support without boundaries. The man knew that the puppy would grow up, but he would be with it until the end. The puppy had become not just an animal, but a true friend, one that supported him, gave him strength when it was needed most. It wasn't just a pet, it was his life partner. The puppy grew not only physically but also mentally. It began to understand that its place in this house was not just as a helpless baby, but also as a protector, a helper. It taught the man many things, even without words. The man realized that not only could he teach the puppy, but the puppy also taught him to appreciate the simple things in life, to find joy in every moment, and to be brave in any situation. Months passed, and now the puppy was no longer small. It had grown into a large, strong, and confident German shepherd. Its coat had become shiny and thick, and its eyes were full of wisdom and determination. It was ready for new challenges, and the man saw in it the protector it was becoming. The day came when the man and the puppy, walking in the park, witnessed something unexpected. In the distance, on the horizon, the man noticed a pair of suspicious figures. These were people who seemed to be following him. The man became a little tense, feeling the internal fear begin to slowly take hold of him. He didn't know exactly what they were planning, but his instincts told him that the situation could get out of control. He signaled to the puppy, and, as always, it looked at him attentively, ready to follow him without asking any unnecessary questions. Suddenly, the figures began to approach, and the man felt his heart beat faster. These weren't just passers-by. They were potential dangers. The puppy, noticing the aggression in their movements, immediately became alert. Its body tensed, and it growled, signaling that it was ready to protect its owner. As the thieves got closer, the puppy didn't hesitate. It lunged at them with wild energy, undeterred by their numerical superiority. The man saw how the puppy charged at one of the criminals, holding him back while the second one tried to attack the man. But the man was ready. He reacted instantly and managed to push the attacker away. The thieves, not expecting such resolve, retreated. The puppy confidently returned to its owner, proudly wagging its tail as if saying, "You're safe now." The man realized that now the puppy was not just his companion but also his protector. He felt proud of his pet, who, despite all the difficulties, had become a true friend and a loyal assistant. This victory became an important milestone for them, a confirmation that together they could face any danger. Time passed, and the man and his loyal companion's life was filled with new events. The puppy, which had once been a helpless, small creature, had now turned into a strong, confident German Shepherd. His body had become powerful and muscular, and he continued to grow every day. The man, in turn, had already gotten used to his presence, and between them, a bond had been formed so strong that every day became an important milestone in their lives. For the man, the puppy had become not just a pet, but a true friend, who was with him in every moment, in times of joy, in moments of difficulty, and in dangerous situations. He knew he could rely on this dog, and that was his greatest wealth. They spent more and more time outdoors, walking through the park, around the neighboring areas, and sometimes going out of town. The puppy loved these moments. He ran, played with the ball, raised his big paws in the air, and every time they returned home, there was joy in his eyes and gratitude in his behavior. The man continued to care for him, watched over his health, and there was nothing more important to him than knowing that his pet was healthy and happy. However, the peaceful life couldn't last forever. The man began to notice more and more that when he came home late from work, suspicious people appeared on the street. At first, he didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just coincidences, but his intuition wasn't wrong. This feeling of unease never left him. He could feel that something bad was lurking. One evening, as they were returning home, the man and the puppy decided to walk through a dark, poorly lit part of the city, where there were few people and the road led straight to their home. The man walked confidently, and beside him, his loyal companion trotted, cautiously looking around. The puppy always sensed when something was wrong. His reaction to the surroundings was infallible, but on this evening, something felt especially disturbing. Suddenly, at a turn, the man noticed a few people emerging from around the corner. They were walking towards them with clear intent. It was obvious. At first, the man and the puppy paid them no mind, continuing on their way, but as soon as they got closer, these people stopped, and one of them blocked the path. The man instinctively stopped and observed them. He noticed that they were behaving suspiciously, and there was some hidden threat about them. The puppy tensed up, his tail raised, and his eyes became sharp and watchful like a seasoned guard. The man felt his heart begin to race. He knew these weren't just random passers-by, but people who clearly had something planned. Before he could make a step aside, one of the men suddenly stepped forward and tried to grab him by the shoulder. The man immediately sensed the tension in the air. He took the puppy by the collar and pulled him back a little, but the puppy, sensing the threat, immediately lunged forward without hesitation. The puppy, with astonishing speed, jumped on the attacker, grabbing his arm and sinking his teeth in, not giving him a chance to continue his movement. The man, without wasting a moment, stepped aside and, seizing the moment, grabbed the other person who had tried to approach from the other side. He pushed him away, feeling the adrenaline fill his body. They weren't ready for such resistance. The person the puppy had held onto tried to break free, but the German Shepherd held him firmly, not allowing him to move. The other two criminals, realizing that the situation was slipping out of control, tried to flee. But the puppy didn't retreat. He wasn't just defending his owner. He was determined to stop these people. He growled, and his growl was so loud and furious that even the criminals hesitated. The man, seeing how bravely the puppy fought, immediately understood that he had to take control of the situation. He forcefully pushed the last attacker and quickly pulled out his phone to call the police. While the man was on the phone, the puppy, without releasing his victim, continued to hold him in place. It was truly remarkable. The man, feeling how his animal had become his protector, felt confident, knowing he wouldn't be left in trouble. The police soon arrived at the scene, and all three attackers were arrested. The puppy, proudly standing next to the man, looked at them, ready to fight again if they tried to attack. After the police took the criminals away, the man, stunned by what had happened, took a step back and looked at the puppy. He couldn't believe that his pet had been so brave, ready to fight for his safety at any moment. The puppy, with pride in his eyes, walked up to his owner and sat beside him, as if waiting for praise. The man crouched down beside him, placed a hand on his head, and smiled, saying, "You saved me." "Thank you, my hero." That evening became a turning point in their lives. The man realized that this puppy had become not just a friend, but a protector. He was ready to stand by him until the end. This day was proof that even small creatures can be true heroes when their love and loyalty are stronger than fear. From that day on, the man felt how his life and the life of the puppy were inextricably linked. They were not only owner and pet, but partners who supported each other in any situation. The puppy was no longer just an animal. He had become his hope and support. Their lives were filled with new meaning, and the man knew that now, with such a friend, he was ready to face any hardships that might come their way. Several months had passed since that memorable day when the puppy showed his bravery and became a true protector. Despite all the dangers they had faced, the man continued to live with the confidence that now they were invincible. After all, he had this loyal and fearless pet. Every day spent with him became a lesson that true strength lies not in physical power, but in loyalty and devotion. The puppy grew and became more mature, but his curiosity and desire to protect his owner never faded. They continued walking their usual routes, but the tension the man felt didn't go away. He started noticing strange things. More people, suspicious figures on the street, sometimes hiding in dark alleys. His intuition didn't fail him. He knew that something was off. Something on the horizon once again threatened his peace, and he couldn't allow himself to relax. The puppy, too, became more alert, watching every movement around them, his keen nose detecting the slightest change in the air. And then, one evening, during their usual walk home, things went wrong. The streets were empty, and it seemed like nothing could disrupt the silence, but with every step, the man felt his heart race. He knew danger was close. It was like a premonition, growing stronger until it turned into reality. Suddenly, around the corner, a few people in dark jackets appeared. The man didn't even have time to step aside before they were right in front of him. The criminals had clearly been following him for some time, and now it was obvious that their appearance on his path was no coincidence. At first, the man and the puppy didn't pay much attention, continuing on their way, but as soon as they got closer the people stopped, and one of them blocked the way. The man instinctively stopped and studied them. He noticed their suspicious behavior, and there was some hidden threat between them. The puppy tensed up, his tail raised, and his eyes became sharp and focused like a hunter's. He growled, warning the intruders that he wouldn't let them get any closer. The man immediately understood that action needed to be taken quickly, or the situation could get out of control. He didn't know how many of them there were, but his instincts told him. Be prepared for anything. The attackers didn't stop, despite the puppy's protest. One of them tried to grab the man by the shoulder while the others surrounded him from different sides. The man, realizing he couldn't handle them all at once, made a quick step to the side, trying to break free. In the meantime, the puppy was already in the thick of things. He charged at one of the attackers with lightning speed, biting his leg and forcing him to retreat. The criminal let out a cry of pain and recoiled, but that didn't stop the others. They continued moving forward, growling menacingly. The man, seeing that the situation was getting serious, grabbed a nearby stick lying on the ground and began throwing it at the attackers, trying to keep them at bay. But they didn't stop. With every movement, the man felt the tension building. The puppy didn't back down, attacking those who tried to approach, protecting his owner like a true guard. Everything happened quickly, too quickly to allow time for thought. One of the criminals, noticing that the puppy had severely injured his partner, backed away, realizing that they couldn't handle such a foe. The others also began to retreat, growling and threatening, but still backing off. The man and the puppy wasted no time. The man kept holding the stick, preventing them from getting any closer, and the puppy, waiting for the right moment, jumped at one of the attackers, forcing him to run off. In the end, the attack was repelled. The criminals ran off in different directions, realizing they couldn't handle such a threat. The man was breathing heavily, and the puppy, glancing around, watched every movement until he was sure the danger was over. The man stood, holding his pet close to his chest. He felt grateful and protected, but also tense. The puppy returned to him, sniffing his hand as if checking that everything was okay. The man calmly petted him on the head, praising his courage. He knew that on this night the puppy had saved him, and now they both, though exhausted, could move forward, knowing that their bond was not only based on friendship, but on incredible loyalty and mutual trust. Time passed, and the man realized that thanks to his pet, who had become not just a protector, but a true friend, his life had changed. He no longer felt loneliness. They were a team, ready to stand by each other, protect each other, no matter the hardships. They had faced this danger together, and now nothing could separate them. The puppy, now an adult and strong dog, continued to be a support for his owner. The man knew that many challenges awaited them, but he was confident that with such a friend by his side, they could face any threat. Even if the world brought them dangers again, they already knew how to win, not just through strength, but through loyalty, bravery, and the willingness to be there for each other, no matter what. From that moment on, the man and his German Shepherd became even more inseparable. For the man, this experience proved that even in the toughest situations, it's important to have a loyal friend by your side. The puppy had become not just a friend, but a member of his family with whom he could face anything that happened.